So Debbie, welcome to the Everymind podcast. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, and thanks for having me.
No worries, no worries. I know this is we was talking about what other guests can we get on, and I thought about you straight away because I know we've only had a few conversations, but every time I get off the phone, or the Zoom call, I always think of ideas and stuff like that. So Debbie, for the people listening, can you let us know a little bit about what you currently do within your work?
Yeah, so it's Debbie Bullock. I work for the insurance company Aviva, and I'm responsible for the wellbeing of our employees here in the UK. So there's about 15,500 colleagues in the UK. Our wellbeing programme is split into four key areas: be healthy, be mindful, be secure, and be awesome, which looks at physical, mental, financial, and social and everyday wellbeing for our people. I manage a team of three whose entire focus is on wellbeing, and we sit within the people function at Aviva.
Nice. And how long have you been doing that for?
So I took this role on in January 2018. So I've worked for Aviva and its predecessor companies for my entire working career, actually. The advantage of working for such a large organisation is there are so many different roles. But I came from a marketing and then corporate responsibility background. And it was the working in the corporate responsibility side and truly understanding the importance of people to the success of a business and looking after colleagues in terms of making sure we future-proof the organisation. So when we decided to have a real tight focus on well-being and the role came up, I was like, I want that job.
Nice. And what was the drive behind that? Because I meet so many people like you that are driving well-being in organizations, and a lot of them there is a personal reason, or there's something that interests them in that role. So what was it for you? Did you have any of those personal reasons why you wanted to get into that sort of work?
Yeah, so I think I'm a really people-y person. Anyway, I like interacting with people. I don't know whether I would class myself as an extrovert, but I'm certainly not an introvert. I like spending time with people, and I like to care for people. I do a lot of stuff in the community where I live. You know, I've been involved in scouting, my church, the school governor type thing. And it's always about bringing people together and supporting people. Bringing up my family is the same, sort of like I'm the person that people come to, but recognizing that can bring its own challenges as an individual as well, and then can impact your own well-being. So I don't have like a clinical background or anything like that. It's just a genuine interest in people and knowing that if we can help people and support people, they're going to be at their best, which for an organisation, especially a service organisation like ours, if we help our people be the best, then the service they provide is going to be the best. They're going to perform at their best. So it was just a no-brainer, really, of bringing something I love, which is our people, it means I love getting up every morning to do my job. It's like, why would you not?
Nice. I love that. And I guess when you first got the role, was it just you that was within that wellbeing team and then you added people to it, or did you always have a team at the beginning?
So it was created as a team of four of us, so three and myself leading the team. So it was created like that. So there were trailblazers within the business. We have a health business as well, and we promote and encourage our corporate clients and our individual customers to think about their well-being with regard to their health insurance. So we want people to stay healthy so they don't claim on their health insurance. So well-being was already in the thought process of the organisation. And then we had colleagues in the people function who were like, we need to be thinking about this for our own colleagues as much as we do for the employees and customers that we support. So we started to pull together a plan and what that might look like for Aviva, and recognising that to gain the right momentum, we needed a team to deliver that. And that's how the team was born, and I got the role.
Nice. It's awesome. So I know a little bit about what you've done, and every time I have conversations with you, I feel like, you know, you've got a team, you've got some buy-in, and equally, you know, you're probably steps ahead of a lot of people that might be listening to this. You know, if there's like a standalone HR in a role where they're only just sort of starting with focusing on mental health and well-being for their employees. So I want to touch on that in a minute about if someone's not done anything, what should they do? But before I do that, over the years of you working for Aviva and the work that you do, is there a couple of things that you've seen to be really effective that has really, really paid off?
So I often describe well-being as a three-legged stool, and sometimes what people focus on is just one of those legs of the stool, and you need all three for it to be sustainable. I bang on about this analogy a lot. So a lot of people look at the benefits and the package that you might get and think about well-being in those terms. So access to a digital GP or a discounted gym provision or yoga classes, fruit in the office kind of thing. And that is really important. But another leg of the stool is about the culture of the organisation. Because if that's not in a good place, that's things like psychological safety, those kind of things, and the right culture, you can't make the most use of those benefits. If you haven't got the right work-life balance, psychological safety, how are you even going to use the things that people create? And then the third leg of that stool is personal accountability. So we need to help educate colleagues so they understand why they might want to take that step towards personal well-being. I'm not their mum. I'm not the mother of 15,500 colleagues in the UK, thank goodness. So it's not up to me to tell them what to do. It's not like dealing with a child. So you need to educate, inform and encourage them so they make their own choice. So I think if you were looking at what key things make it successful, those are the three pillars, if you like, for me. Because if one leg's missing, you could probably get by, but it's not very sustainable. You'd wobble quite a bit. If you've only got one leg of the stool, it's really not much use as a stool.
Yeah.
And it's the same for a wellbeing program.
It's funny because we use something called the Threepiece approach, which is three pillars. And it's very similar to your three-legged stool approach. So we focus on promote, provide, protect. Like you say, you can easily implement initiatives, you can train your managers, but promote is very much about that psychological safety within an organization, the stigma, the workplace culture. And, I've seen in the work that I do, many organizations forget that. We've got this tool, we've got this training happening, but actually when employees don't feel safe and comfortable to use that training, then they're not going to use it. So it becomes a waste of investment. So
exactly that.
So
exactly that.
You're really focused on, I would say, that strategy, right? There's a why, there's a reason behind what you're doing at Aviva.
Yes, very much so. So not looking after the well-being of your people is actually a business risk. It's not even, the well-being of your organisation is not a nice to have anymore. It's an actual business risk, whether that be because of attracting and retaining talent, the risk of burnout to key individuals in the organisation. So it's really important that people embed it right across sort of everything that they think about from a business perspective. So it's great that we have a team and we sit within the people function, but actually a lot of my time is spent talking to the business about them building it into their everyday thinking. And that's part of the strategy, actually. And that's where the culture leg comes in again. It's about so that everyone is thinking about well-being, not just the well-being team. And I think that's what's really important as well.
I love that. Let's talk about that because I'm very interested in that. And I'm sure when we was on the panel, you mentioned something along those lines. How do you embed it into day-to-day conversations at work?
So I think having leaders who are comfortable and confident, and that I don't just mean the senior leaders. Quite often in an organisation, you have brilliant demand from the bottom and brilliant, oh yes, we're doing this from the top buy-in. And then it sort of gets into this hourglass of a squeezed middle kind of shape. So the team leader level, so that first line leadership, whether you call it manager or leader, is really important in making well-being and having safe and honest conversations. If you can't feel that you can tell your leader about an issue you're having, whether that be well-being related or business related, in fact, if you've made a mistake and you have fear of even raising that with your line manager, or if it's a well-being issue, you have fear of raising that you have a mental ill health challenge at the moment for fear of what that might mean for the future, then that's not a great place to be. So leaders play a really crucial role in opening that stigma and removing that stigma and making it a safe space. They're crucial to that culture that you need to create of psychological safety. And doing that and having an open and inclusive environment applies so much broader than just well-being. There's the whole diversity inclusion agenda as well that it supports. So that culture underpins the success of a business in so many different ways, not just well-being, that it's really important. And like I said, leaders play a crucial part, but they can't just talk the talk. They need to walk the walk. They need to role model. So we're lucky in the fact that we have individuals and leaders at very many levels across very different departments in Aviva who are prepared to share their story about their lived experiences of well-being, whether that be physical, mental or financial well-being, often a forgotten thread around well-being. But that first person story and finding someone that colleagues can think, oh, there's someone like me. So those stories are important at every level, not just at the top. So having those stories from someone at the top opens up the door and sometimes gives permission, but they aren't always relatable to someone further down the organisation. You might get, oh, well, it's all right for you, ... You know, so you need a mix of stories across all levels so that you can have, oh, that person was like me. And they've, you know, they're living a great life. They opened up about it. You know, they haven't suffered any repercussions. So you need it at all levels of all different kinds of stories.
I love that. Yeah, I really relate to that. I think personal experience is so important. How do you share those stories with the
we've got a number of ways. Obviously, we've been restricted with the pandemic. We're living in quite a lot of a virtual world at the moment. So we have internal communication channels like Yammer, which is a social media type internal system. We have MS Teams as a video chat facility, and so we have groups on there where people come together and be in groups and share, and support groups almost that are self-generated, as well as on Yammer. We use that intranet a lot. So we have a weekly live stream series, which we call Uncut, where our senior leaders are regularly talking to the business and taking any question, no questions off limits kind of thing. And that's often where some of their stories at senior level sort of come out. They might get asked a question, could be anything from, you know, how are you using your volunteering hours that Aviva gives, or, you know, it's World Mental Health Day coming up. What challenges do you face, or how do you maintain your mental health? And they'll tell a story, and it will be genuine because they won't know that the question was coming. So there's lots of different channels that we use. And then we have a dedicated intranet site for wellbeing, which has, it's less of a communication tool that and more of a repository of information. So it's not the most glamorous looking of intranet sites, but it's all about how quick can you find what you need. So we're pleased to say that from any point in our system, most people are 2 clicks away from the homepage and then 1 more click away from the thing they actually need. So 3 clicks to get to what a service you need or the support you need in just 3 clicks.
Nice. That's really cool. I love that idea of like the weekly live stream where they can ask questions. But even with that, I was just thinking, I'm sure you mentioned about, you know, I talk a lot about with mental health stigma, it's awareness, understanding, action. I'm sure that probably came at a time when you'd done a lot of awareness and education work. So the leaders were like, I'll answer any questions you want, because I'm sure at the beginning of that, I'm sure a lot of leaders would be like, I'm not being vulnerable on these live streams answering questions.
Yeah, and that's something across the live stream isn't specifically just wellbeing related questions, it's business related questions, and anything goes literally. And yeah, we are lucky in the fact that we've established over the past few years a real authentic leadership style at Aviva. And, you know, our leaders at all levels, you know, but including our C-suite senior level leaders, have that authenticity and vulnerability. It's a weird word to use, I think, because people still fear the word vulnerability itself. which is why I tend to use authenticity. But yeah, sort of like that genuine and honest. This is what happened to me, and this is where I am in my life. And yeah, there are days where I don't feel like this, or I don't feel on top of the world either. But that's where the team, element of working in a large organization really helps as well. So yeah, the live stream broadcast is really good, and we'll have specials for various different things as well, depending on the time of the year. So results and things like that. It's a great communication method.
Because then you guys can probably plot some questions in there as well that you want to get across from Wellbeing. It's I love that idea.
Yeah, it's good. And I mean, obviously it doesn't replace pre-COVID, and now we're coming out of the pandemic, so our senior leaders are going back to visiting our sites again. So, they're going out and doing town hall type sessions as well, which are also ask anything, anytime. But because they can't be everywhere, and we've got lots of offices around the UK, so the weekly stream just gives everyone a chance, regardless of where you are, what your working style or pattern is, to be able to ask those questions.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, because I think you highlighted it. We have a free course called the Everymind Champions course. And the idea of that is to get employees, no matter their level in an organization, to feel like they can champion it. And like you said, there's sometimes a lot of employees that feel like, oh, if my business isn't doing anything, senior leaders aren't buying into it, then I can't do anything. But I really understand the importance of personal story and personal experience, because I've seen it myself from sharing my own story, just how that it can be contagious. It's like someone sharing makes someone else feel like they can share, and someone else feels like they can share. And before you know it, you're having more conversations about it. And I'm glad you said that you do that rather than, the general ones of, we put signs up, we do this. And I know obviously it's all changed because of COVID, and I'm sure there's a lot of that too. But I think personal stories and making it very employee driven is a really powerful way of making it normalized, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I always say wellbeing is really individual, but obviously as an organization, I can't have 15,500 individual wellbeing programs, because that's just not going to work either. But having a range of services and support that people can call on in different ways and different means, and making them easy to access for people, but also having leaders well equipped and trained to help signpost people, or for individuals to know that it's safe to go get that. But you're right, first persons, I mean, yes, we do still have emails and posters, and when we're in offices, those kind of activities as well. But outside of that initial, if you bring something new in, outside of an initial launch email where you might get a bit of a flurry of, oh yeah, that's fine. The thing that tells the greatest story is people like me. People who are like me. And when you see people like you doing that, and that's it. And I think opening up and having conversations, it's menopause, is any taboo topic, whether it's mental health, menopause. I shock people quite often still outside of our organization. I think inside of our organization they've got more used to it now, but I frequently talk about the fact that I'm a menopausal woman. I'm experienced in menopause. I may forget your name, so if I see you at an event in the future, please forgive me if I forget who you are. I'll recognize you, but I won't be able to remember your name. And and then they go, oh, she's talking about the menopause as a cause of that. I was like, yeah, it's caused me anxiety as well, and those kind of things. And there's a little bit of a, but you're right. The more that we do it, the more people will feel comfortable doing the same. Some people ask why I put my pronouns on my signature. It's because my pronouns are she and her. But by normalizing adding pronouns to our signatures and other places, it makes it more acceptable for people to use all their pronouns, so that we can more easily identify people whose pronouns might not be what someone initially thinks, so they feel comfortable saying their pronouns are they, them, or these, or whatever in each individual feels. So the more everyone does something, even if it's not directly impacting them, the better it is for everyone.
I love that. It's really, really important, because I feel, as you said, the biggest challenge that we still have with mental health is, yes, awareness is increasing, but there's still such a misunderstanding about, as you said, how individual it is. And mental health and well-being isn't just a topic that you can talk about once a year. And, you've got so many different factors that come into well-being and mental health, and still we paint it with a very sort of simplistic brush. It's like, oh, it's very simple. We can do mental health talks once a year and everything will be happy. But like you say, it's so individual. The more awareness and education and understanding we can have, the better I think then we're equipped to manage it and deal with it ourselves.
And I think the first step is reminding everyone that they all have mental health all of the time. It's when you say the words mental health, people immediately wrongly think mental ill health. And that's not the case. You know, we all have mental health all of the time. And we would think nothing about going, oh, I've put on a few pounds, I'm thinking about popping down the gym or going on a healthy eating plan. So you would quite openly share that. So, but we don't feel as comfortable yet saying, oh, my mental health has put on a few pounds in it, or whatever the way we would describe that is. My mental health's not in a great place today, so I'm going to take myself off and do some mindfulness, or take myself off and do this. That's not entered normal language yet still, despite the fact that we're trying to do that everywhere. And I think until that is normalized in language worldwide, we will still face these sort of small stigmas. So the first challenge is reminding everyone that mental health doesn't mean mental ill health. And mental ill health is not the same thing either. There's such a broad spectrum. It could be just a bit of anxiety that you get and you can easily control. It could be bipolar or psychosis. There's such a broad spectrum of things that people could tag as mental ill health that I'm not sure it's helpful as an overall term either. We tend to describe our mental health being on a sliding scale, and we've got prevention stuff that helps people keep them on the top end of the scale and hopefully stops them sliding towards the negative. But should people get down there, we've got intervention support as well, and sort of everything in between. But even identifying where you are on that sliding scale is the first step. It's getting better everywhere, but we still have a long way to go. And like I said, the first thing is just convincing everyone we've all got mental health all of the time, and not associating that with pictures of black and white with people with their head in their hands. Because that's not what mental health is about. We need more smiley facey mental health pictures and less pictures.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's so true. I talk a lot about it in the session that I deliver about the sliding scale, and then I talk about the sliding scale of physical health and mental health, and then I open up about the education that I got with physical health was, Paul, if you keep eating those donuts after school, you're going to become physically unwell. Paul, keep drinking water. Eat an apple a day to keep the doctor away. Like you're being educated to be very proactive with your physical health. But that sliding scale of mental health, I was taught, one, you haven't got mental health, and two, if you ever struggle with it, don't talk about it unless you drastically need to talk about it. So I think we're all being educated to, as you say, firstly, not even know that we have mental health. Like I used to bucket up mental health with mental illness, and then mental illness, my education was straitjackets and what I saw in the media and the news. Like that was the way I was brought up. So when my dad was struggling, we didn't understand it, we didn't get it. But then equally, we're very conditioned and educated to be very reactive. Like you say, we don't have the understanding and the self-awareness to know that we're on that sliding scale. So we just wait until we're in that crisis.
Falling off the end.
Do something about it.
Yeah, very much. And I think society in general needs to work with that. And I think workplaces can support that. We spend a third of our lives at work, 8 hours a day. Potentially can be at work. When you consider you spend 8 hours a day asleep, and then 8 hours a day doing other things. So it's a third of your day on average at work. So we're in a position to contribute to raising people's awareness of the fact that we all have mental health. And we can contribute a lot to people's mental health, positively or negatively, depending on the way the environment is set up in the office or in whatever working environment you have. So I think it's really important that employers recognise the part they have to play in helping individuals become self-aware. Individuals still need to take that personal accountability. So going back to the top of the conversation when I talk about the three-legged stool, so we can help educate and provide, support, but there's an individual accountability as well. So people need to step into that. We can't do it for people, but we can certainly, as employers who are a large part of people's lives, do a lot to support that and certainly not make it worse.
Yeah, exactly. It's like providing them with the tools that potentially they need to manage their own mental health. But like you said, you could have the gold-plated mental health and well-being strategy of every initiative under the sun, but a lot of it still comes down to, like you say, the personal accountability of that individual. Amazing stuff. I do want to go back to that question of, with your experience, if someone's maybe listening to this and they don't have much in place already, maybe a smaller business, what would you advise them to start with?
I think don't underestimate actually what you've probably got, but you don't call it well-being. So a lot of smaller organisations sometimes seek advice and they go, oh, we don't have a wellbeing programme. And then they talk about their culture and the way things are and, oh, this little deal that they've got around the corner with this provider or whatever. And I was like, that is the start of a wellbeing programme. Your culture and your ethos is there. So the first thing would be, don't underestimate what you've got. You might just not call it well-being. So have a good look at that. The next thing is to understand anyone in a leadership role in an organisation, I think, needs to understand mental health and the fact that what we've talked about, the fact that it doesn't just mean mental ill health, and needs to be open and aware of supporting colleagues in the business. So some good quality training or support for anyone in a people leadership role, which could be one or two people in a small organisation or 50 or 60 people in a medium-sized organisation. But that would be an area I would target. And then use first-person stories. And I think even if you don't have access to everything that a larger organisation might have, if you've got a culture of openness and support with educated and supportive leaders, then even if your signposting is to services in the NHS, you've made the right start. Empathy is massively important for each other, but again, that people leader role is so intrinsically important. So I would look at training for your people leaders, understanding what you've already got, creating some signposting documents that those people leaders can use if they think people are struggling, and then start talking about it in your organisation in an open way.
Yeah, I love that.
That would be my things.
I love that, because that kind of like tackles the whole, as you say, top-down strategy of managers being equipped, but then equally you're empowering employees to share. And I also love the idea of, we just put out we call it the mental health support directory. It's like pages and pages of advice of what support you can get accessible for free in the UK. And one of the reasons why I wanted to create that, and I've got to give credit to the team, they did a better job. I just said, can we create this? Is there's so many numbers out there and so many websites, but then it's like going onto the website, how do I get access to this? So we basically broke down a lot of the charities and, services that NHS recommends. And we sort of took them through step by step, like go to Anxiety UK, go here, this is how you try and access free therapy based upon, Anxiety UK, and we break it all down. And I think you're really right there. It's like a lot of organizations, smaller organizations, I don't mean to stereotype, will just say, right, we'll sign up to an EAP because then at least we've got some counseling if people want it, but they forget like the core reasons why, like you've just highlighted, whereas actually there are some free resources out there that you can signpost to, but it's about equipping your managers, empowering employees, and focusing on the culture.
Yeah, if you've got a psychologically safe culture, that will stand you in better stead than paying money for an EAP, because you can have the right conversation. And if you've got a signposting document, which you guys have pulled together a great one for everyone to use, then that's the start. It's if people are having the conversations, you've almost cracked the difficult bit, the culture bit. That's providing a list of benefits and services, or paying for a list of benefits and services, is the easiest part. It's the culture of an organisation and just an openness to, and removing the stigma, that's the harder part. So if you can do that first, and the other thing that I missed out of my first bit is, as an organisation, genuinely look at what you're asking your colleagues and your employees to do. Are you actually contributing to a decline in their mental well-being by the way you're asking them to work? So a real people-centered approach. So if you've got someone who's got caring responsibilities, are you being as flexible as you possibly can to help with that? Because that will support their overall mental health. Have you got someone who's neurodiverse rather than neurotypical? And are you set up to help them work in a way that best suits them? Setting your employees up for success rather than setting them up for failure will underpin their well-being. So genuinely look at, have you got more work than you have the number of people to do the work? And what can you do about that if you have? What can you take off the list? Or can you recruit more people? The latter isn't always possible. So how do you prioritize the work so that you're not adding to potential burnout? And the great thing about all those things, that psychological safety, empowering first person stories, looking at your culture, are all at zero cost. So it's about making work good for you. Business in the Community, I've released a report recently called What If Work Was Good For You? And that is that's what we've got to underpin. If we can create the right culture and work that doesn't make you ill, then that's a great place to start.
And that's a great example of like you being someone who, as you say, is people focused in comparison to, we've signed up to this new initiative for all of you guys, but we're still going to throw loads of work on your plate and not worry about the fact that you've got care and responsibilities and we want you back in the office by 9 o'clock tomorrow. So like you say, once what I used to get frustrated at a couple of years ago, and it's slowly changing, when you hear about the employers that are doing good things for mental health and well-being, it used to just be like the stuff they've signed up to. They've got a slide in the office, or they provide free fruit and all of that. But actually, like you said, it's the people-centered approach of, we know this individual has got care and responsibilities, so we're going to be flexible with that. I think that, as you say, is free, which is why it gets overlooked so much, because it's often the hardest, not the hardest thing to do, but it's often the most challenging thing to do for a lot of the bigger organizations. So it's amazing to hear that you're very focused on that people first approach.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Our people are our biggest assets, so we need to help support them.
Yeah, and even like our team's a small team. There's about 15 or 16 of us. And obviously like our aim is to improve mental health in the workplace. And I'm always thinking as the founder of like, should we be doing more? Should we be doing more for our own people? But I think, you've really helped me reinforce that it isn't about what we sign up to. I really strongly believe I have a very good open culture with our employees, because if they want to talk about their mental health, they can. I, as the founder, I'm very open and honest about my own, and I try and set that precedent. And we've already seen employees feel like they can talk about it. And I think that far outweighs me saying, hey guys, we've signed up to this EAP where you can access counseling whenever you want, or we've signed up to this when you can do that. And we do things, again, like it's free. We do a weekly switch off at 4:30 every Friday. And the reason why we wanted to do that is, we're talking about mental health every single day of the week. And for some people that can be quite heavy. And we do a weekly switch off on Friday, and they've now started to have a bit more format where last week we guessed everyone's baby photo. The week before that we played bingo, and that's free, right? But I think in that half an hour with my team, I feel like I get to know them more than the team meetings.
Yeah. And obviously that kind of thing can depend on the size of an organisation and whether that works on a team level or whether you just let individuals have some time themselves. I think one of the things that we have seen a slew of recently is organisations giving colleagues a whole day or a whole week where the entire operation shuts down for a week. Or a day. while that is very laudable, my only concern about those kind of things is they're positioned as, it's to stop them suffering burnout or a mental health break. And I was like, but are you doing anything about the environment they're returning to a week later? Because if not, all you've done is postpone it rather than solve it. And you've also potentially made their stress worse because they've now got a week's worth of work to catch up on. So it's a real fine balance between, what seems like a good idea versus actually what it's about the root cause of the issue that are making people feel like that. And if you don't solve the root cause, all you're doing is sticking plaster over it. You're solving the symptoms rather than trying to solve the cause. So, but yeah, all those kind of things are really good, but just have a genuine look. That's why I say it's about it, as well as the individual people, it's about looking at your workloads, about your culture, and just seeing if you've got that balance right.
Yeah, I love that. It's so true. Like you say, I mean, if you give everyone a week off and they come back to more work and a culture where they can't be themselves, and it's like a week-long holiday, isn't it? And like, it's that whole saying of you don't need a vacation when there's nothing to escape from. It's like, you wouldn't need that week off if the
great phrase.
The culture is already in place. Yeah, I love that. So a couple of things to just finish up. Firstly, you might not be able to tell us everything, but what are you carrying on focusing at Aviva sort of moving forward over the next year or two?
So in the very immediate future, obviously, some colleagues are choosing to return to the office some of the time. So we're introducing what we call smart working, which is about colleagues working in the best place for the business, the customer, and them as an individual. So colleagues are going through the change curve again. So in the same way last March, when everyone was suddenly working from home, which was new, they're now trying to adjust to a new way of working for them. So supporting our colleagues through the change curve is something that we're looking at. We will always review our wellbeing program. I'm really getting into the nitty-gritty of organisational design at Aviva with our specialist people function colleagues who look at that and trying to understand if they get that right. So, the right role, the right accountabilities, how do we measure the wellbeing success of that? So that's a chunky piece of work. And then other things to consider are, it's not that we don't do it currently, but are we communicating and packaging up correctly our support from a broader family perspective in terms of things like fertility, baby and pregnancy loss, those kind of, so we're just reviewing some of those policies that might have been in place for a while that might need a bit of a refresh. So we'll be working with our employee relations and policy colleagues to understand where that sits in terms of, whether our colleagues would expect support from their employer in that kind of area or not. And if so, what? So those are some of the pieces we look at. And then the other thing that I will always be doing is banging the drum about talking about things and being open and sharing stories. So we will continue to do that. But yeah, nothing spectacularly new really on the horizon, because it's all about individual conversations continually. So I don't think there's any brand sparkling new, hot off the press.
I love that you said that though, because that just goes to show you that this isn't a one day or year thing that you can do. It's like you're still in it, you're still tweaking and perfecting and learning and listening, and that's probably going to carry on for however long you continue doing it, isn't it? It's not
very much so every day is a learning day.
Yeah, it's not like one campaign that's about to happen and that's going to revolutionize workplace well-being.
No. I mean, in a way, you almost wish that could be the case. If we could all run a campaign for 2 weeks, wave a wand, and the world be sorted, that would. I mean, obviously, I'd be out of a job then. But I'd go for that. For it's almost like the old contestants. What do you want? Well, world peace, kind of thing. So well-being for everyone with one campaign and the wave of a wand would obviously be wonderful, despite it doing me out of a job. But that's, as we know, that's not realistic. So yes, an ongoing continuation, really.
Yeah, but if you come up with that campaign, you'll be a very rich lady, right? So everyone's looking for that magic bullet for well-being. So
Rich in the fact that I know everyone would be in a good place. I would probably be the kind of person who would do it and not charge for it. If there was some solution like that was available, it deserves to be free for the world.
100%. And I think people are looking for that one solution, aren't they? But I think your answer to that question was, we're just carrying on as we are and changing this and trying this. And like you said, there's so many different topics that fit underneath the wellbeing and mental health umbrella that haven't even been explored yet. So I think it's so important to just keep that going. The last question I've got is because a lot of HR professionals listen to this and often ask the question, who's HR for HR? What do you do to manage your own mental health and wellbeing in the work that you do?
So outside of work, I have two things that I do. So I'm a keen amateur baker. So baking is my mindfulness time in the kitchen. So I made a malt loaf this weekend following certain TV programs, technical challenge this week. So I like baking. I find when I'm focusing, especially on a new recipe, that's really good for my mindfulness. Similarly, I'm part of a workplace choir. So for an hour a week on a Tuesday, I go and sing, and that's really supportive. The biggest piece of advice I would give to anyone, and this is one thing that I'm absolutely rigid on, is take control of your diary. Your diary is like your body. You're in charge of what goes in it. And so I have 90 minutes to 2 hours a day dedicated focus time with no meetings that I do my work. I have my lunch booked out every day, and I'm an early riser, so I might be at my laptop by 7:30, but I'm gone by 5. And I never, ever take my devices with me on holiday, ever. Doesn't matter how important I think I am. I'm genuinely not that important that they can't live without me for a fortnight or whatever. So that's what I do to protect my well-being, and then spending time with my family, obviously. It just grounds me, and it reminds me I'm not that important.
Yeah, I love that. It's that non-negotiable, like that non-negotiable. If I'm putting a lunch break in my calendar and no one can interrupt that, because I'm the same. It's, I talk about, you got to have your non-negotiables, and, I don't necessarily like the word coping strategy, because I don't think it's about coping, is it? It's about thriving and feeling positive. So your non-negotiable is, like you say, finishing at a certain time, switching off, baking, lunch breaks and all of that. I love that. I did bake a cake. I don't know if you can see that. I baked a cake.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice. That looks like, it's chocolate?
Chocolate cake. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I've got to be honest, baking and cooking is not very good for my mental health. I'm an awful at it. I did have a lot of help from my wife, and also, he enjoyed it more than I did. Let's just put it that way.
Time together. My thing is the outcome is almost irrelevant. It's the action of doing it. Usually mine are edible, even if they don't look good, but edibles a win in my house, as long as it's edible. There's been the odd one that haven't been, but I just think it's just try another one, try another time.
I love that. It's really cool. Debbie, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. And there's so much that I've taken from it. I'm sure others have as well. So, thank you for taking the time out. I appreciate it.
No worries. And have a great rest of the week.
And you.